But first, I want to introduce you to a remarkable young woman who will soon visit Australia and have an impact on our national debate. Her name is Grace Stanke. She hails from America's Midwest. She's 22 years old, and 2 years ago, she won the Miss America pageant. Yeah, they still run those events. But Stanke has many strings to her bow. She's also an accomplished violinist, and she represented her university in competitive water skiing. But what makes this woman particularly relevant here is that she is a nuclear engineer, and she's also an advocate for the industry. I caught up with Grace Stanke today ahead of her Australian speaking tour and kicked off by mentioning that beauty queen and nuclear engineer double is a pretty unique mix.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual. I think the dichotomy of it really feeds into each other, though, because I think a lot of the things that I've gained from my interests and my hobbies, both as a former Miss America, but as a violinist, as a competitive water skier, as so many of these other things, they help feed into creating me the engineer that I am today. And I'm really, really thankful for the skills of communication that I learned as Miss America, but then able to carry that into my time as a nuclear engineer to help communicate and teach people about nuclear science.
Yeah, I've had a look at your resume, so to speak. You must have had a pretty busy time, especially through your teens, doing all that sport and music. And tell us, though, what drew you to nuclear engineering to study and for a career?
You know, it's a funny story because I actually knew absolutely nothing about nuclear science growing up. Like, I knew it was maybe bombs from World War II in history class. And I thought there was 2 reactors in pretty much all of America. Like, I was like, there's no way there's more. I know nuclear energy is a thing, but I don't think it's actually used. So I initially was really only considering nuclear engineering because I thought it just sounded really cool. And I went and asked my dad for career advice when I was choosing my college major. And I asked him, I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm thinking either nuclear or aerospace engineering. What are your thoughts? And he says, you know, Grace, don't go into nuclear. There's no future there. And I was like, okay. So now I'm going to ask you a question. Do you have any daughters, any kids?
I have 4 sons.
Oh, okay. So you're lucky. Because I was going to say, teenagers, when you tell them not to do something, what's their natural reaction?
Exactly.
Exactly, to go and do it. So that's how I initially started in nuclear engineering, was because my dad told me not to go into it. But once I got into it and was learning and being sort of awakened, I want to say, to where nuclear science exists all around us, I thought to myself, man, if nuclear science is helping cure cancer, you know, my dad's a 2-time cancer survivor. He wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for nuclear medicine. I realized that there is indeed more than 2 reactors in all of America. In fact, there's 94 that creates 20% of America's electricity. I learned that nuclear science is a part of our everyday home life, from bananas to avocados, smoke detectors, our spices in our spice cabinet, you know, all of those things. Nuclear science is all around us and doing so much good for the world around us. So imagine if we embraced it. Imagine how much more good it could do. And that's where the advocacy side of my passion came in, is I love to talk about how nuclear science is all around us.
Yeah, now, presumably your father told you not to go into beauty pageants as well, so that's why you became Miss Wisconsin and Miss America too. But let's talk about, you do advocacy as well as working as a nuclear engineer. Well, I'll come to the advocacy in a moment, but first up, tell us about your role as a nuclear engineer. What does such a person do on a day-to-day basis in a nuclear energy facility?
Sure. So I work for Constellation. They own and operate 12 different nuclear power plants across the country here in America. And I specialize in pressurized water reactors. So of Constellation's fleet of nuclear power plants, that is 4 of the 12 power plants that they have, soon to be 5 of the 13. We've got one that's coming back online here shortly in the next couple of years, which is very, very exciting. But on a day-to-day basis, a lot of my engineering role is helping create reload products, is what they're called. So I help with planning out everything that has to do with the nuclear fuel when we're switching between cycles, because nuclear fuel can only fission for so long. Fissioning is the process that's happening within the nuclear fuel to help create the heat that then is turned into electricity, right? Because this is just fancy hot rocks that boil water. That's a nuclear power plant. I paid a ton of money to get a degree that taught me that, essentially, right? So I help with the planning process of everything to do with that nuclear fuel.
Now, I'm just back from the US, and I visited 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania while I was there, because you talk about the future of nuclear energy. It is in a resurgence, isn't it, in the United States, because that controversial, infamous reactor, really, where there was a nuclear accident back in the late 1970s, is now about to reopen. Microsoft are going to contract to take all the energy from a reopened reactor there, and there are other plants around the states being reopened or having their lives extended and planned for new reactors, because nuclear energy is bouncing back not just in the US but around the world. What's going on?
Correct. You know, here in America, that plant that you talked about, so 3 Mile Island has 2 reactors. So the reactor that's coming back online is not the one that had the meltdown in 1979. So just to clarify that, that it's Unit 1 that's coming back online. So Unit 1 operated until 2019. But globally, there is this massive resurgence and massive renewed interest in nuclear as a whole. And that's because we need clean and reliable energy. And due to AI and data centers and all of this load growth that's happening globally, we're realizing we need more electricity. But we're also realizing the issue that is climate change. You know, I'm a young person. Gen Z's generational issue is climate change. So people are starting to really care about clean energy and how this energy is going to transition to that. And nuclear is one of the few types of clean, emissions-free energy generation that can fit both the bill of reliable, large amounts of electricity and be emissions-free.
So you're heading out to Australia as part of your advocacy. Nuclear for Australia are bringing you out here. Can you believe that a modern country like Australia that exports uranium and has a medical and research reactor here, has operated for many decades, actually has a ban on nuclear energy? And do you think a modern economy can actually get to net zero without nuclear energy?
It really surprises me that there's a deliberate ban, right? Because I think it's up to the Australian people to really choose what they want for their energy transition and what they want their energy grid to look like. So I firmly believe that the ban should be lifted, because Australian people should have a right to be able to at least have the option, because as of right now, they don't even have that option. So to me, that's the most important thing that we really need to see happen over the next period of time here that we have coming up in Australia. But overall, it's never too late, right? It is never too late to take action. It's the good old saying of better late than never, right? And especially when it comes to climate change and building clean, reliable, and high-paying jobs for people in communities, I think that that's a huge impact that we don't talk about enough, is the high-paying jobs that can be transferred from coal plants. You know, I know that Australia has about 52% of electricity coming from coal. Those skills that those employees have can transfer that right into a nuclear power plant. It's very similar processes in terms of the function once you switch out what is making the heat.
Grace, it's fascinating to talk to you. You're going to love your visit to Australia. You're speaking all around the country, and hopefully at the end of that trip, we'll catch up with you again and see what you make of the nuclear debate in Australia.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much.